Heuermann pleaded guilty to 7 murders and admitted to killing an 8th killing as part of a plea deal. Prosecutors say he will serve 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He has also agreed to be interviewed by the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit.
In court, the 62-year-old stood in a dark suit, his hands shackled behind his back, and calmly answered guilty again and again. Some victims' family members seen wiping away tears as he described murdering victims after victim by strangulation. His ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, and their daughter were also there. And after the plea deal, she said her thoughts and prayers are with the victims' families, calling their loss immeasurable, while families of the victims said they are grateful.
Most neighbors thought he was just another quiet architect living a normal suburban life on Long Island. He went to work, raised a family, and blended in so well that nobody suspected anything unusual about him for decades. But behind that ordinary routine, investigators now say he was secretly connected to one of the most chilling unsolved murder cases in New York history. And after years of denying everything, he suddenly stood in court and admitted responsibility for the deaths of 8 women. Even more surprising, he didn't just confess, he gave up his right to fight the charges forever. So why would someone stay silent for decades, only to finally tell the truth now? Because what investigators uncovered before that courtroom confession changed everything. For nearly 3 years after his arrest, Rex Heuermann maintained his innocence while investigators built their case piece by piece behind the scenes. Court hearings came and went, evidence kept growing, and families of the victims prepared for what many expected would be a long and painful trial. Then everything changed in a single courtroom appearance. Standing before the judge, the former architect calmly admitted responsibility for the deaths of 7 women and acknowledged causing the death of an 8th victim. One by one, he confirmed the charges without emotion, and then made an even more unexpected decision. He agreed to give up his right to appeal. That move immediately guaranteed he would spend the rest of his life behind bars, but it also meant the public trial many people expected would never happen. Families who had waited decades to hear the full story suddenly realized they might never learn every detail in open court. And what made the moment even more chilling was how ordinary he appeared while saying it. Because the man now admitting to these crimes had spent years living what looked like a completely normal life just outside New York City, and almost no one suspected a thing. For decades, Rex Heuermann lived what looked like a completely ordinary life. By day, he worked as a professional architect in New York City, meeting clients, managing projects, and commuting like thousands of other workers every morning. At home, he lived with his wife and children in a quiet Long Island neighborhood where nothing about his routine seemed unusual. Neighbors later said he mostly kept to himself. Some described him as quiet but polite. Others said his house looked different from the rest on the block, older, cluttered, and easy to overlook. Still, no one imagined they were living just steps away from someone investigators now believe was connected to one of the most disturbing cases in the region's history. For years, the murders linked to Gilgo Beach remained unsolved, turning into one of the longest-running mysteries in New York. The case haunted families, confused investigators, and fueled endless public speculation about who could be responsible. And all that time, authorities now say the suspect wasn't hiding far away at all. He was living in plain sight, raising a family, going to work every day, and quietly blending into the neighborhood like anyone else. But what finally exposed him didn't come from a dramatic witness confession or a sudden breakthrough tip. It started with something investigators almost overlooked. For years, investigators chased leads that went nowhere. The case stretched across decades, and the trail kept going cold. Then something unexpectedly small changed everything. Authorities say a discarded pizza crust became one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire investigation. After quietly collecting it, analysts were able to compare DNA from the leftovers to genetic material connected to the victims, and the match helped place Rex Heuermann directly on their radar. But that was only the beginning. Once investigators started looking closer, they uncovered a pattern they couldn't ignore. Records showed burner phones had been used to contact several victims, and cell tower data helped trace movements that lined up with key moments in the case. Even an old witness description from years earlier suddenly became important again. Someone had reported seeing a large man driving a distinctive pickup truck near one of the victims shortly before she disappeared. Piece by piece, what once looked like unrelated clues started forming a clear picture. And when authorities finally searched his home, they say what they discovered inside made the situation even more disturbing than anyone expected. When investigators finally searched Rex Heuermann's home, they weren't just looking for physical evidence, they were looking for answers. According to authorities, what they found on his computer revealed a digital trail that raised even more serious questions about how long this activity may have been planned. Reports say investigators recovered search histories connected to updates about the Gilgo Beach investigation itself, suggesting someone inside that house had been closely following the case as it unfolded over the years. Even more unsettling, officials later revealed they discovered documents that appeared to outline detailed planning behavior connected to the crimes. Investigators described them as guides that showed preparation steps, timelines, and methods that matched evidence already linked to the victims. It painted a picture that shocked even experienced detectives. Because instead of random events, authorities now believe the actions were carefully organized long before anyone realized what was happening. And as these discoveries became public, attention quickly shifted away from just the evidence, and toward the people sitting quietly in the courtroom only a few feet away from him. As Rex Heuermann confirmed the charges in court, he wasn't sitting there alone. Just a short distance away, his ex-wife and daughter were watching everything unfold in real time. For years after his arrest in 2023, his family had publicly maintained that they never believed he was capable of something like this. His ex-wife had even said she wanted to hear the truth directly from him inside a courtroom, rather than through headlines or documentaries. That moment finally arrived. Witnesses inside the courtroom described a tense and emotional atmosphere as victims' relatives sat nearby, some quietly wiping away tears while the charges were read out one by one. Through it all, Heuermann reportedly showed almost no visible reaction. His daughter was seen holding tissues. His ex-wife remained expressionless as the hearing continued. Not long after his arrest years earlier, their marriage ended in divorce, and the family had already spent months under intense public attention as investigators worked through the case. Now they were sitting face to face with the reality of what he had just admitted. But even as the courtroom focused on the emotional impact of the confession, another unexpected development quietly emerged behind the scenes. One that suggested this case might still help investigators understand far more than anyone originally expected. For years, Rex Heuermann denied any involvement in the killings. So when he suddenly admitted responsibility in court, many people immediately started asking the same question. Why now? According to his attorney, the decision to plead guilty was partly meant to avoid a long and painful public trial for the victims' families. Instead of forcing them to relive the evidence step by step in court, the confession brought the case closer to a final resolution much sooner than expected. But that explanation didn't stop the speculation. As part of the agreement, Heuermann also agreed to cooperate with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, a group that studies criminal patterns to better understand how cases like this unfold. That detail quickly caught attention, because cooperation like this sometimes helps investigators answer questions that go far beyond a single courtroom verdict. Some observers have even suggested the cooperation could help authorities understand whether there were earlier warning signs or patterns that went unnoticed for years. Others online have wondered whether investigators were still exploring unanswered questions connected to the timeline of the case. Officials haven't confirmed anything beyond the victims already named. But the decision to cooperate with federal behavioral experts made one thing clear. Even after the confession, investigators believed there was still more to learn from what happened. With the guilty plea officially entered, all eyes now turn to the next chapter of this long-running case. Rex Heuermann is scheduled to be sentenced on June 17, 2026, and prosecutors have made it clear they will be seeking multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. 3 consecutive life terms are expected for the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, while an additional sentence of 100 years to life covers the other 4 victims. By the end of it, he will almost certainly never leave prison. For the families of the victims, the upcoming sentencing represents both closure and a moment of reckoning. Decades of uncertainty and grief are finally coming to an end, yet the weight of the losses remains palpable in the courtroom and across the community. Even with the plea deal and sentencing looming, authorities say Heuermann's cooperation with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit may still reveal insights about his behavior, patterns, and how such crimes went unnoticed for so long. Experts hope this information could prevent similar tragedies in the future. And while the legal proceedings move toward their final conclusion, public fascination with the case continues. People are still asking whether all of the story has truly been told, and if the quiet suburban architect who hid a dark secret for decades can ever be fully understood. Because even after a confession and a courtroom filled with tears, some questions about what drove him and how he managed to keep his double life hidden may never be fully answered. In the end, Rex Heuermann's story is a chilling reminder that appearances can be deceiving. A quiet suburban life, a respected career, a family at home, all masking a dark secret that haunted Long Island for decades. His guilty plea and the sentences he faces finally bring legal closure, but the case leaves lingering questions. How could someone lead such an ordinary life while committing such horrific acts? Were there warning signs that went unnoticed? And even now, what can investigators learn from his cooperation with the FBI that might prevent something like this from happening again? For the families of the victims, there's some comfort in knowing justice will be served. But for the public, the story remains haunting, a stark example of how darkness can hide in the most ordinary places. And as the courtroom empties and the neighborhood returns to quiet, the memory of what happened lingers. A reminder that some truths, no matter how long they stay buried, eventually come to light.